So there's been this firestorm of debate lately around executive orders targeting diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. But what does the academic world actually think? Well, beyond the headlines, over 20 scholars got together and published a unified response. Today, we're going to dive in and walk through their core arguments to really understand their perspective.
This one phrase, mend it, don't end it, pretty much captures the entire theme of their response. Professor Herman Agonis, who came up with it for this editorial, is basically arguing that, look, DEI initiatives aren't perfect. Nobody's saying they are. But the solution isn't to just scrap them entirely, it's to improve them. And that idea is really the thread connecting every single argument we're about to explore.
All right, so here's our roadmap for this. First, we'll get into what prompted this big collective response in the first place. Then, we're going to tackle that really heated debate around meritocracy. After that, we'll look at the broader risks these scholars see for democracy itself. Then we'll cover their specific calls to action, and finally, we'll circle all the way back to that core idea of mending, not ending DEI.
So, what got all these academics to form a unified front? Well, for them, it wasn't just another policy change. They saw these executive orders as a direct challenge to decades of research and progress in fields like organizational science and social justice.
You've got scholars like Donna Maria Blancero explaining that the big concern here is that these orders could directly lead to more inequality and more discrimination. The folks who contributed to this piece argue that this isn't just some political disagreement. No, they see it as a move that threatens to unravel years of work that was aimed at building a more just society.
And let's be clear, the language these scholars are using is incredibly strong. I mean, this quote from Oscar Holmes IV, he doesn't pull any punches at all. He calls the orders a monumental abuse of power and a threat to our democracy. This just highlights how seriously they're taking the situation, and it really sets the stage for the arguments they build from here.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting. It's how these scholars tackle one of the biggest criticisms thrown at DEI, the idea that it completely undermines meritocracy. They don't just defend DEI, they completely reframe the entire debate. So here's the central conflict. On one side, you have the common critique that DEI is inherently discriminatory and anti-merit. But the scholars' rebuttal, man, it just flips that idea on its head. They argue that a true meritocracy is actually impossible without diversity. Their whole reasoning is, if you're only looking at a tiny slice of the population for talent, you are, by definition, missing out. In their view, DEI is the tool you need to achieve genuine merit.
And Alison M. Conrad makes this point even more forcefully. Her logic is pretty simple, right? If you believe that talent is spread out equally across all groups of people, then any system that consistently rewards only one group is, by its very nature, not a meritocracy. For her, diversity isn't some nice-to-have bonus. It's a mathematical necessity if you actually want to find the best people.
So why doesn't everyone see it that way? Well, Mustafa Özbilgin introduces this fascinating concept he calls strategic ignorance. He argues it's this kind of unearned privilege that allows dominant groups to ignore or just flat out deny that systemic discrimination even exists. And in doing so, it preserves the status quo and actually makes those inequalities even deeper.
And to push back against that claim that DEI means hiring inferior people, scholar Diana L. Stone points to some seriously powerful historical examples. I mean, think about the Navajo code talkers, absolutely crucial in World War II, or groundbreaking innovators like Alan Turing. Her point is that time and time again, diversity has been a source of incredible strength and absolutely essential contributions to society.
Okay, so this whole debate about merit in the workplace, it naturally leads to an even bigger question, doesn't it? The scholars in this collection argue that the fallout from this anti-DEI push goes way, way beyond corporate hiring practices. And that's where we get to the scholars' next huge point. For them, this whole fight over DEI isn't some isolated issue. They see it as just one piece of a much larger trend, one they believe puts democratic norms and social justice at significant risk. Alison Pullen draws a really direct line here. She argues that the very principles that DEI is built on, things like pluralism, respect for difference, are the exact same principles that a healthy democracy is built on. So in her view, an attack on one is pretty much an attack on the other. Then you have scholar Cliff Sheng, who's basically saying, hey, you need to look at the bigger picture here, the historical and political context. He provides this whole list of books to read and things to watch, not as a tangent, but to argue that the anti-DEI movement is part of a long game by certain political groups. His point is, to effectively respond to this movement, you first have to understand its deeper roots and what it's really trying to achieve. you can really feel the passion behind these arguments, and some of the language is just intensely powerful. Take this quote from Karen Lee Ashcraft. For her, the backlash isn't just some political strategy, she frames it as this deeply psychological threat, driven by what she calls a fragile ego in common.
So, given that they see the stakes as being this high, what do the scholars propose we do about it? They don't just sit back and analyze the problem. They offer a really clear and forceful call to action, not just for their peers, but for society as a whole. Okay, so folks like David L. Ford Jr. and Oscar Holmes IV are calling for a response on multiple fronts. And this isn't just about, writing academic papers. They're calling for everything from public protests and legal challenges to, yes, continuing their research, but also even engaging in civil disobedience.
But there are other approaches too. Joan C. Williams points out a potential silver lining in all this. She argues that companies can actually reduce their legal risk by using evidence-based tools called bias interrupters. These are practical, data-driven things, like making resumes anonymous or standardizing interview questions, all designed to cut down on bias in hiring and promotions. This approach reframes diversity as a smart business move, not just a social one.
At the end of the day, the call is really for persistence. Martin and Davidson sums up the academic community's commitment perfectly. Despite all the political headwinds, the core mission for them stays the same: to keep conducting and sharing research that they believe will lead to both stronger organizations and a fairer society.
And this brings us right back to where we started. The final overarching message from these scholars isn't just about resistance. It's really a constructive vision for the future of DEI, and it's all built on that idea of reform and improvement. So what does mending DEI actually look like in practice? Well, Herman Agines offers these really concrete steps. It means moving beyond just good intentions to things like clear accountability, truly weaving DEI into the core business strategy and culture, and, this is a big one, actually measuring what works and what doesn't with a real evaluation system. And what's the whole point of all this mending? Well, Mickey Hebel and Eden King bring it all home. They state that the ultimate goal of a well-designed DEI program is the exact same goal its critics claim to want: a true meritocracy. A system where your skills and what you can do are what truly matter, not your connections, not your wealth, not any kind of bias. I think this final quote from Karen Lee Ashcraft is just the perfect summary of this whole forward-looking perspective. It's a really candid admission that, yeah, maybe past DEI efforts were flawed, or as she puts it, made for a dying world. But it's also this incredibly powerful call to evolve, to mourn what didn't work, and then to get to work rebuilding something stronger and way more effective for the future. So, as this whole debate continues to rage on, the challenge these scholars are putting forward isn't just about being for or against DEI. They're pushing us to ask a much more sophisticated question. How do we move beyond good intentions and actually build systems that are measurably fair and provably effective for everyone? That, they argue, is the fundamental question we all need to answer.